Welcome to Innovation Tales, your go-to podcast for the human side of digital transformation.
Hello, and welcome to a new episode of Innovation Tales. My guest today is Ian Johnston. Isn't it fascinating how we always fight to keep our digital transformations from becoming these huge Big Bang implementations? Why is it so difficult to stick to an iterative approach? With Ian, we explore these dynamics and discuss two related aspects: funding and the expertise of those involved. With over 30 years' experience in digital transformation, Ian's insights are invaluable. He started his career in the City of London, implementing financial dealing room and wholesale banking systems. In 1994, he joined Pega and has been involved in many successful projects in finance and other industries. In 2019, he co-founded AI for Process with Amit Agrawal to help clients get the best out of their digital transformation. They brought together many experts in Pega and other tools to provide resources and best practices to clients. Are you ready for deep insights, practical advice, and a great attitude? Here's my conversation with Ian Johnston. Ian, welcome.
Hi, Alex.
It's an immense pleasure to have you on the show. I'm interviewing a lot of Pega experts for this first season, but you're by far the one that has been involved with this technology the longest, isn't it? I was wondering, maybe for the audience, could you share how you got into Pega, I think 30 years ago now? And also, what made you stay in that ecosystem all this time?
Well, I started off life in banking in the city, in trading systems and banking systems, and then I did a project for HP, for the company I was working for at the time, and they had this workflow system which I thought was really cool, where you could build a process and control a process and the user interface. And about that time, I was headhunted by a guy who was working on behalf of Pega, trying to build up the Pega team in the UK. So I had already had the interest in workflow. He was a company that was starting off in the UK, looking for people like me. So it sounded like a really interesting subject to get into.
So the technology was already on your radar as something that you'd like to get more experience with, yeah?
Yep, definitely.
And 5 years ago, you co-founded a company called AI for Process. Mm-hmm. Could you tell us a bit more what led you to create a new company? What was the vision and how much progress you've made since then?
Yeah. So I left Pega in 2018, essentially to do something different. As a stage where I wanted to do something else, move on, and then. Which I did. I left, and then I knew I was going to do something, but I was looking for an opportunity. And then Amit Agrawal, my business partner, came along, and he's very persuasive, and sort of asked me to come along and form AI for Process. And what we wanted to do is we wanted to incorporate best practice into Pega implementations, basically to use our skills and to bring on other Pega experts to help people implement Pega and subsequently other tools as well in the kind of BPM workflow environment. Implement them. We knew how to make Pega work, how to make projects work within the Pega environment, and we wanted to do that in the best way, using best practice, using the best people, and we figured that the best way to do that was to create our own company, and do it that way. Amit obviously has experience with Pega and with other companies in the Pega ecosystem, with running Pega practices. So it was an ideal combination between the two of us.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. And are you happy with the progress?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. We've been growing. We had a little pandemic in the middle of the last 5 years to trip us up, but things have been going very well, and we've got a long list of clients that we're currently helping on their journey with various BPM tools, but mostly in the Pega environment at the moment.
Cool. Before we transition to the next segment, I wanted to ask a bit of a unusual question, but for the audience, Ian and I go way back. I was lucky to meet him 17 years ago, and I've always been inspired, not only by Ian's technical depth, but by the attitude you have at work. I don't think I've ever seen you stressed or angry. So I wanted to ask you, where did you get that superpower?
Superpower. I don't know. I suppose some of it you're born with, some of you have influence of the people around you, but I don't tend to get, flapped by certain situations. I guess what you see on the outside is not necessarily what's going on the inside. But I think keeping cool and taking a step back and looking at problems or situations, be they, communication issues or whatever, is always good to do.
We're not going to get a silver bullet then today to...
Not that I know of, no.
All right.
Echoes of innovation.
It would be great to have an example to illustrate how an iterative approach, one that avoids big bangs, can benefit digital transformation leaders, right? So let's say we are in some, let's say an insurance company, and they do have some systems in place, but mostly they're, core ERP type of systems. And so from a business perspective, what kind of objectives should be prioritized first?
It depends what they already have in terms of systems. The things that BPM systems are very good at is orchestrating, coordinating between different actors within the organization, between customers and customer service and this kind of thing. So it's going to depend on the level of automation that's already there, and the level of manual processes that are currently there, and the control. So typically, if you go into an insurance company, they may have a lot of different systems. They may do a lot of stuff on spreadsheets, checklists on spreadsheets and things like that. Interdepartmental communication may not be great. So, if you have a customer talking to one department, they can't see what's going on in all the other departments, for instance. So having a centralized system where you're able to record transactions and work between departments and be able to view across customers or clients or whatever, something like that.
So, of course, and if we were to put ourselves at that point in time, so they're considering, they see an opportunity, they want this transparency, but then what could happen to derail their attempts to do a smaller implementation at first, to do an iterative approach? What kind of arguments are sometimes, in your experience, made to recommend, let's do more, let's do everything? Where's that coming from usually?
I think there's a budget aspect that drives it. So who's going to pay for it, and the people who are paying for it, or the business units that are paying for it, want to see everything done, and they want everything, and for their money, etc. So there's kind of that going on for starters, which is a problem. And clearly, anybody, when they look at automating part of their organization, is going to want everything as well. They're not going to be satisfied with something small. There's probably lots of other reasons as well why that doesn't happen. But you see it in so many places. They try to boil the ocean, and they want absolutely everything. And what starts off as an iterative, agile project to deliver sprints worth of production functionality turns into a huge waterfall project, because everybody decides they can't live without everything on day one. And, what happens is then nothing happens because it never gets there. It's the personnel, obviously. I mean, all of these things are all about the people. You need the right people with the right vision in the business. You need the right people to manage and govern what's going on. And then you need the right people to actually perform the implementations for you. You need to have, high caliber people who understand the technology and who also understand the business. And that's key to being able to understand both of those things to get the best out of the implementation.
And how does that work at a personal level? It's rare to have a business leader that has done agile, for example, projects before, so they might not have that much experience with that. And on the technical side, you were talking about the art of the possible. I guess you're referring to a more technical skill set, but how do they understand what the business objectives would be?
I think some of that has to come from within the business, but then some of that can also be provided through third parties, the software implementer or the SI. They can provide that, but they're not going to be able to provide everything to the business. I mean, in any software sale where you're selling a software application to a business, you need a good buyer as well as a good seller. The buyer needs to know what they're buying and how they're going to get the best benefit out of it. And, not every buyer is what I would term a good buyer. Some projects are doomed to fail because the buyer doesn't actually know what they want or what they're buying, and therefore it's very difficult for anybody to be able to succeed in that environment. But if you get a good buyer and a good team, and you've got a good seller who understand what they're implementing and selling, then you can make it a success.
So let's say in our hypothetical example, the buyer is struggling a little bit. This, midway through our story, they might be described as you just, said, maybe not the best of buyers. They're a little bit confused about this approach. What can our hero, our digital transformation leader, do to guide them, to get them back into, on track?
And that's exactly what they'd have to do. And again, you're relying on the experience and the knowledge of the implementation party. If we're going in, I mean, one of the things that AI for Process tries to do is to put in high caliber people into our projects in order to be able to help and guide the client to be able to get the best out of us, get the best out of the software. Yes, it is it's teamwork between all of you and everybody's contributing. But if you do have a lot of experience in this, you are able to provide that that advice and guidance, the governance. One of the things that we do, which is pretty important, is to go in and set up a center of excellence within an organization to be able to help that governance, design, art of the possible. How do you coordinate? How do you do reuse and all of that good stuff across the organization? And that is providing some of that, but you do need some some experience on the customer side as well, ultimately. But help is available.
So it sounded like you were talking more about a partnership, not only providing implementation services, right? Because you were saying that, well, you need sometimes to be part of the governance to guide sometimes the direction. So is it fair to describe that as a partnership?
Absolutely. That's exactly what it is. Yeah. And the partnership may be between multiple partners as well, because it's never as simple as just two companies, a business and and an implementer. It's many companies potentially in a lot of cases.
So is that hypothetical story that we just told, is that actual? Does that happen in reality?
Yes, it does. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I think I've seen both ends of the scale many times. From the waterfall, which never actually gets there, to the iterative, where everybody's seeing new stuff coming in and things improving on a weekly basis.
All right. Well, I think that's very encouraging for our audience. If you like this story, please like and subscribe. It will help us share it with a wider audience.
Innovator's Playbook.
For the last segment, we want to share practical advice with digital transformation leaders. An iterative approach, the shape of it, what is maybe the first thing you're going to do, the first quick wins, depends on the funding. Can you maybe expand and elaborate on that a bit?
Sure. I mean, if it's a small business and has a single business unit, then it's much easier. It's clearer. It's a single business, one particular business unit, one source of funds, implement one system. Fine. You know what's going to fund it. You know where the benefit's going to be. But if it's a large organization with 10 different business units, then where do you get the funding from? Is there a central budget for IT for transformation that you can use? And if so, how does that get funded? And typically, particular business units will make more money than others. So therefore, do they pay more? You might have one part of the business that is a lot more complex but makes much smaller margins. So how do you disperse the costs across the organization? And you may be fighting separate finance departments in each business unit, and the budget for the whole organization's IT, possibly won't run to the kind of money you would need to do a transformation across the whole organization. So that's where the difficulty lies.
And is there a structured approach to kind of, depending on the funding in place, how you approach the technological project? Or is it the other way around? You kind of figure out what you want to do from maybe a business vision perspective, and then you try and find the right funding.
I guess it's all got to be driven by cost benefit, hasn't it? It's difficult to do it any other way, and the benefit has to be demonstrated to each part of the business. And in order for them to want to fund that transformation for their part of the business, they need to be able to see how they're going to benefit. And it comes back down to, let's do something on a small budget to start off with that we can roll out to the main businesses who can then see some progress, have paid a small amount of money and got some new functionality for that money, some transformation. It's all about being able to demonstrate that they're not just pouring money into a central bucket, which after 3 to 5 years, they're going to get a new system that's going to do everything they want. And typically what happens is, everything changes during that period. So, the leaders change, the businesses change, everything changes, and now you're left with something which is never going to be finished, and, the business has paid a lot of money for. So it really does come down to looking at the cost benefit in each business, having a central decision-making process to work out, what you're going to do first in terms of prioritizing what you're going to build. But I think, you do need to have the ability. I mean, it depends how much control you've got in your business of the purse strings across the business. Because if you don't have any control, it's going to be very difficult for you to justify building something that every part of the business benefits from, but one part of the business is paying the most for because they make the most money. Yeah. So I think there's a balance there between, the benefit of each business unit within the wider business and, what's going to benefit everybody.
Mm. Yes,
It's almost like you need a little bit of socialism within your business to make sure that everybody benefits rather than just the people who shout the loudest and make the most money.
Yes, because you're potentially looking at benefits further down the line, right?
Yes.
Sometimes the short-term investment is only part of the whole picture. And I think I was I like the metaphor of the tree for an organization where the business units are the branches or the leaves or whatever, but they have a trunk that they have in common, and those are the shared services, of which information technology is often one of the core ones. And some organizations are like huge trees, with one big trunk and like a few branches up top and nothing else. And then some other organizations are more like bushes, where there's almost no shared services because, I don't know, the way that the organization came into being through merger and acquisitions, or maybe just the strategy of the organization. So it sounds like, coming back to the funding, that you want to take into account the shape of the organization, and based on that shape, which part of the organization are going to see the most benefit. Those are the ones that you would, by default, approach. But then let's get back to what we were saying about longer term investments and creating assets that are going to be a sort of a public good within the organization.
Yeah.
How do you fund those?
And you get, pointing out the economies of scale. So, you're building, rather than each individual part of your business building their own by themselves, you're building it once and everybody's benefiting from it. So, you're getting that economy of scale. So I think it's being able to put that into a short time scale, again, so that everybody's benefiting within a short period rather than, a long protracted global transformation program. I think that's the key, to be able to show that it's not only are they going to get something which is, best in class, best practice, but it's going to cost them less money, and they're going to get things more quickly. They're going to be able to get improvements more quickly and better functionality, and they're going to be able to benefit from innovation in other parts of the business.
And some organizations solve this, quite complicated challenge by simply having, information technology, IT, take care of all the projects from their budgets. Is that a good idea in your opinion?
I think we're always going to be moving towards it being business driven rather than IT driven. The tail shouldn't wag the dog. The IT department, should be able to guide the business, telling them what the art of the possible is, the best practice, the new innovations are. But at the end of the day, it's got to be business driven.
I guess I agree with that because I've seen so many IT departments kind of hijack those initiatives. And from a business perspective, in those cases where they're not really paying for it, there is no business case as such. There is just a replacement program for one tech by another or something like that, or just the acquisition of a new tech. So it does seem like it loses its meaning. Like there's no clarity about why this is being done other than, internal IT purposes. So what other practical advice should we give to our audience?
Well, I think one of the things I feel most passionate about is the people side of the industry, and with the increased sophistication of BPM and workflow platforms, you really do need the right caliber of people to be able to create business applications within businesses. You can't throw an army of people against at a problem in order to solve it in any short space of time. It needs a smaller number of higher caliber people who understand the business that they're going to work in, and they understand the technology, be it Pega or anything else. They know exactly what it's capable of. And I think a smaller number of people can be a lot more productive when they know exactly what they're doing, as opposed to having a larger number of, more junior resources on a project such as these. But there is an issue there, which is how do I bring on new people? How do I train them up? where do these experienced people come from? Because there isn't an infinite pool of these.
No, I'm sure every leader would prefer to have less reports or less people to manage and then being more productive. But it's not always possible. So what can you do?
Yeah, I think the I've always described a diamond shape to the project team that's working on an implementation, and rather than the pyramid where you have your experienced people and your leaders at the top, and a small number, and then you have a large number of your an army of your more junior people at the bottom who are doing the actual work. I think it's more of a diamond shape is what you should have. So you have your leadership team, and then you have a larger number of senior consultants in the middle, and then a smaller number of more junior people that you've got that you're actually bringing up and training and who are gaining experience. You're always going to need that because you're going to need to fill from the bottom up, as people move away, leave the project, or move up in the diamond. You're going to have to fill from the bottom. But having a diamond shape rather than a pyramid, I think, is key. What you tend to find is that in more traditional projects is that the more senior you get, then the less you do in terms of actually building things, designing things. And actually that should be the other way around. I think you need experienced people, and you need to change the mindset that actually moving up in terms of seniority should mean that you still do that work, but you do it at a much faster or more efficient level than you would have done. So, I think you need to adopt pay scales, for instance. There's a sort of thought that if you want to move up the pay scale, then you have to move up into management. And I think actually what you need to be doing is giving a different route, which is more the sort of principal consultant route. So you actually have very skilled people doing the work as opposed to just moving up into management positions. And then in terms of backfilling underneath, for you, then you do need a small number of people who are coming on training, and not draining the resource out of the more senior people. You tend to have, if you have a large number of junior resources on your project and a small number of experienced people, the juniors will drain a lot of resource from the experienced people, take away from the critical path on the project, and also create work that may need redoing or has a lot of issues, whatever, which then causes the project more.
Yeah. Well, another benefit for the junior people themselves when there's less of them is that they move through, they gain experience
get more
much
attention.
more quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so one of the things we do, AI for Process, is we have a lot of skilled people, but we also train as well. And in training, we will build teams for our clients that will ultimately become employees of our clients, but also for ourselves. But what you need to do is put the trainees or the guys who are just coming up through the training onto projects with more experienced people, but a small number of them, not a large number of them. So spread them across your projects, and so they can gain the benefit of working with the senior people, and you're not by putting many of them on, you're not draining the resource out of the cycles out of your senior employees.
And so to select the smaller number of people, what should they look at?
Well, they'd look at the supplier, obviously, and the reputation of that supplier, and then I think you've got to look at the individuals. If you don't know the supplier and you don't trust them and the people that come on, then obviously you're going to need to look at the individuals, look at their experience and CVs, and interview them and make sure that they've got what it's going to take.
And is it about technical skills, or is there other aspects to consider?
I think it's all round. It's about the technical skills, certainly about the communication skills, and the understanding of the business as well. One of the things that we do when we train people up to go and work within a particular business is that we would teach them not only about the technology, but we'd look at their soft skills, and they may need some help there. We'd also look at training them in the business that they're going to work in. So, when they go into the business, then they can hit the ground running as quickly as possible because they understand a bit about the business, a bit about the big picture, not just the small piece of work that they're tasked with doing, so that they can start to make informed decisions themselves as well. That's part of the learning process.
Yeah, I think it's also part of the respect we show our clients, because it can be jarring for them to have sometimes technical experts join to whom they have to explain the very basics of their industry. I think there's nothing technically wrong with it, but at the human level, there is something about it, isn't there?
Absolutely, yeah. And a lot of businesses aren't that complex. At the end of the day, when you look at what they do, but many people who are working on projects would not necessarily understand because they've never looked at it, they've never had the opportunity or been given the opportunity or been taught, what the business is and how it works and what it does and how it benefits their customers and things like that.
And following up from this topic, is there any book or media recommendation that you would give to our audience?
When I started working in banks early on in my career, there was a fantastic book called How the City Works, which goes into all aspects of finance and how it works within the City of London. And my recommendation is and it's still valid now. I mean, it all still works in the same way it ever did. Largely, technology has moved on somewhat, but the basics of banking and finance are, as far as I know, fairly similar, or if not the same. And that's a great thing. If you're going into a telco company or an insurance company or whatever, to do some research and to find a book or an online blog about the basics and how it all works is a fantastic thing to do, and gives you so much credibility if you're talking to business users in requirements gathering sessions or whatever as part of the project. So maybe something like that.
Yeah, it's a very good one. Yeah, credibility, I think, is really important in our profession. Absolutely.
That wraps up the first part of my conversation with Ian. I hope you found his insights into the iterative approach, federating funding models, and the importance of people in digital transformation as valuable as I did. But there is more. Ian's vast experience provided us with so much great content that we've decided to dedicate a second entire episode for a deep dive into the world of artificial intelligence. We'll be exploring the latest use cases, understanding the risks, and discussing the capabilities of Pega's process and generative AI. So be sure to tune in to the next episode for this special continuation. You won't want to miss it. Until then, peace.
Thanks for tuning in to Innovation Tales. Get inspired, connect with other practitioners, and approach the digital revolution with confidence. Visit innovation-tales.com for more episodes. See you next time.